everyone, welcome to another vlog post. I have been really crazy busy, which is why it is actually already Tuesday. I wanted to talk a bit about some of the Netflix series I've been watching since November to January, because I think I've been watching some really good ones and you guys might want to hear about them. The first one that has to be mentioned, of course, is Stranger Things. I have to say I loved it. I watched the first season a long while back already, but the second season of course came out around November-ish. Although I found the second season wasn't as good as the first season, it had some issues, I am still strapped in and totally there for season 3. And of course you have to say that I loved Hopper and Eleven's dynamic, and of course I'm totally there for Mom of the Year, Steve. After that I basically went over to another one of my favorites, which was the second season of The Crown. I just really love the series. I am really someone who loves history a lot, so I just very much enjoyed the whole thing of seeing what went on behind the scenes of all these major events taking place around the time when Queen Elizabeth II took over the throne and then during her early reign. I also really just found it so nice to see that the actors played them as human, and that the depth of feeling that they showed just really makes for compelling watching to me, and I love the cinematography in this series. It's so beautifully shot. After finishing The Crown, I went on a bit of a foreign language bender. I actually was busy trying to decide what I wanted to watch next when I saw the trailer for Dark, and I actually decided to give it a watch because it sounded interesting. Really, it was awesome. A lot of people compare Dark to Stranger Things, but honestly I found that in terms of the storytelling, especially if you have to compare, and I know it's an unfair comparison probably, but if you compare the first season of Dark to the second season especially of Stranger Things, Dark is actually the superior story. It is just telling the story in a tighter way, in a more pressing, urgent kind of way that I really liked, that really sucked me in and kept me gripped the whole time. Because of that, it doesn't really rely so much on the whole nostalgia and old-fashioned tropes the way that Stranger Things does, which is actually a strange thing considering that Dark actually deals with time travel both to 1955 and to 1986. The point of this is that I really liked the fast pacing, the tight plotting, the interesting take they had on time travel, and also I really think that the plot they did to resolve the main driving mystery of this first season was really well done. It was one hell of a zinger, and I really am looking forward to seeing what they are doing in season 2. After that I started watching Mante, which is a French language series about a female serial killer called Mante, or the praying mantis, who agrees to help the French police catch her copycat killer on condition that she deals only with her estranged son, who had also grown up to become a cop. I love the series. I found the dynamic between Jean de Bourg and Damien, his son, really interesting and compelling to watch. I have to admit that it is a mystery about who the copycat is, and I found that resolution of that mystery to be a bit of a letdown. I'm not going to spoil it, but it felt like a cheap shot and it didn't sit as nicely to me. I think what the problem was with this was that it did harken back to Silence of the Lambs in a very odd way, which I'm not going to explain, but the problem with that is that Silence of the Lambs was written in a different kind of time and it's not really going to translate well to our lifetime, so that kind of let me down a bit. In the end, you know what, the thing that made the series for me was that relationship between Damien and his mother, and how he had to learn to forgive her and to understand her for what was driving her to become the serial killer. And in the end I found that that aspect of it, that part of the story, was so beautifully wrapped up that I actually don't even really want there to be a second season, because I think a second season would actually just completely cheapen the story that they had followed to kind of find each other. And then since I was still in serial killer mode, I basically went from Mante and I started watching Mindhunter. I really enjoyed it, but again, I'm also someone who does like reading mysteries and thrillers and even watching true crime documentaries on TV and stuff, so this kind of is right up my alley. As a story, I didn't find it to be as tense as, say, Mante was, or as any of the others that I've mentioned so far, except for The Crown. It's kind of a lot like The Crown in the sense that it's based on a true story, so they went for a sense of gritty realism where you kind of have this feeling of being a fly on the wall as they're interviewing serial killers, all of whom were real, existing and really active serial serial killers at the time. The thing with it was then that the tension isn't really driven by plot. It's more driven out of the whole feeling of brushing with this sense of the other in the form of psychopaths and sociopaths and other kinds of serial killers, that they're foreign. So taking a deep dive into their psyche with Holden Ford is really like a thrill, in a sense that I think walking through a jail when you've never been in jail is a thrill. I don't know how to explain it differently. It thrills you on a visceral level, but not really from a story point of view. But in the end, there is tension that does start ramping up towards the end when the choices that Holden Ford had made in order to do these interviews successfully start coming back to bite him in the ass. And that does drive tension, because you can see how those acts and decisions he made start taking their toll on him, and makes for a tense watch. But it's not on the same kind of level as Mante, which was literally written basically as a thriller mystery. So I wouldn't say it's inferior in any way, and I'm definitely there for the second season, but if you're expecting to watch Silence of the Lambs, that's not what you're going to get out of Mindhunter. The last series I want to bring up is The Punisher. Look guys, I was a Frank Castle fan the moment he appeared in Daredevil 2. I like complicated, dark, anti-hero-y kind of characters, and I don't think you're going to get more of an anti-hero character than Frank Castle in the whole Marvel stable. That said, obviously there are some issues around gun control and stuff. I'm not really going to go into that, because for me, I find that I prefer just watching stories for what they are. This was, at its heart, a revenge tale. I found for that it was really compelling, and I really liked the way they did it with the music and the cinematography, and also just the fight choreography. Everything was really, for me, perfectly done to do Frank's characterization justice, which I think made it a great series. If you bring it up in comparison to something just vaguely in the kind of genre terms, and bring it up in terms of something like Stranger Things or Dark, it's not really going to be at that kind of level for story, but that's not what I was watching it for, so that's fine. The thing is that I found that in terms of just the way that it was told, the approach they took to Frank and all those things, as I watched it the whole time, there were really moments that I was like, gosh, this is well done. That feeling was actually, I think, perfect. It was just that visual way they told the story was perfect for Frank, because it did feel like I was reading a comic book, even though it was actually a live action series. For that, I loved it, and I think that although it's not really going to go down as my favorite series that I watched last year, it still goes down as my personal favorite for any of the Marvel series that is on Netflix. So that's basically what I've been watching. What did you guys see lately that you found interesting? If you watched any of these series, please do let me know in the comments what you guys thought of them. Please hit like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye!